Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal. A brand new launch of an expansion, which means a ton of new various collectibles for players to earn, either from endgame content to open world activities, casual content, various grinds and so forth, with plenty of transmogs for players to collect, plenty of things such as weapon enchants, toys, pets, and most importantly, mounts. A ton of new mounts have been added with this expansion. With mount farming being one of the more favorite pastimes of most WoW players, there's going to be a lot of cool mounts that are arriving, though later in Season 1 with the launch of Season 1 for some of the endgame activities such as raiding, dungeons, PvP, delves, and so much more. Even open world content is getting some new additions, but until that Season 1 grind, there are still a few mounts that players can actually look forward to collecting early on, and some of them are really easy to do. Either some of them are really easy to try for with a fairly low drop chance, or have a long quest chain, but it's a guaranteed mount reward that has to do a variety of basic objectives that don't really require a lot of gear or a lot of skill, but may require a little bit of a time commitment. So in this video, I'm going to go over some of the easier mounts that you can obtain right now in the War Within, either early access or with the official launch happening very soon. As always, if you guys want to see more War Within guides like these in the future, go ahead and follow the channel and subscribe. Otherwise, let's dive right in. So one of the first few mounts that you really should get, since there's no reason for you not to, is the Swarmite Skyhunter, which is this bat, spider, scorpion thing combination, really just an amalgamation that's just absolutely nightmarish. But this mount is one of the easier ones to get, however, because all you gotta do is fly around and explore all of the zones of Khazalgar and collect all of the dragon glyphs or skywriting glyphs. It's kind of like the same glyphs we had back in Dragonflight, where you fly around, collect glyphs to advance your mount, but glyphs are no longer tied to the mount advancement. You can just kind of customize your mount from the actual mount window directly. But the glyphs are still there for the collectability purpose, and if you collect all of them, you get this mount. Glyphs are fairly easy to find, at least I felt like they were fairly easy. The only one I had troubles with is Ashka Head, kind of like when you come down initially from Hollowfall all the way towards Ashka Head. Somewhere in the middle, you'll see an area filled with vines that if you fly all the way to the top, that was the one glyph that I had a hard time finding, but the rest of them I found without the need for looking up their location or using add-ons. However, add-ons could definitely make this glyph finding and glyph hunting a lot easier by using add-ons such as Handy Notes. And Handy Notes has a specific plugin for the War Within that shows you all of the locations of different rares, the treasure chests, and all the other information you're gonna need in order to find all of those glyphs. Now for me, none of the glyphs have shown up because I've collected all of them, but if you haven't shown them up, they'll actually show up on the map exactly where every single one of them is. And it makes finding all of the glyphs, as well as all of the other little collectibles, as well as all the mounts and all these other different things that are out in the open world much easier. So in the description of this video, I'll have the link to Handy Notes as well as the War Within plugin, which is required to get all of the War Within features. It just gives you a little bit more map awareness when you're trying to find certain hidden objectives, such as mounts as well as other rewards. Now, another mount that's really easy to collect right now is the Soaring Meaderbee, which you will be able to unlock by slaying a bunch of mobs in the Cinderbrew Meaderbee, or at least in the forests of Cinderbrew Meaderbee. In the actual Meaderbee, there's a unique vendor that sells you a bunch of different items that are very thematic to the entire Meaderbee. But then there's also a mount that you can get by trading in 900 sizzling cinder pollen, which sounds like a lot, but you actually could do this entire mount grind in an afternoon. All you gotta do is slay bees around the Meaderbee. And by yourself, the bees can be a bit of a hassle since they are pretty high level, so fresh level characters just hitting level 80 in the War Within are not going to be able to solo those bees just yet, but grouping up with other players allows you to make that whole challenge and the grind a lot easier. And while you're farming all the bees, it's also a fantastic place for you to be able to farm out a bunch of skinning as well, since all of the bees, as well as the wolves located near the bees, can all be farmed for mats that you can then utilize for leatherworking or sell later on the auction house. But the actual grind for the bee mount is actually really easy. You don't really need a lot of gear. As long as you have a decent enough group, like I said earlier, you could do this in an afternoon. Now, a mount that is a little bit of a grind, or it's going to take you a little bit of time, is Siesbarg. At least I think that's how you pronounce it, but this has definitely become one of my favorite mounts in all of War Within. This thing is amazing. It just looks so good. It looks vicious. It looks absolutely decrepit. It's kind of like those it's kind of like the Demon Hunter Fell Bat mount, but like a heavily modified version that is in Nerubian. And this one takes a lot of time, but the actual grind itself is not difficult at all. There is going to be a lot of time gating for this mount specifically, in terms of you're just going to be a lot of waiting, and then the actual quest you get in order to get this mount takes a little bit of time, but none of it is really all that difficult. So now go ahead, you're going to first want to find a rare called Katoth. The rare itself does take about 6 to 10 hours to spawn, so it is going to be a little bit of time before you see one spawning, but when he does spawn, you will see a message in the world chat that the rare has spawned. So when the rare does spawn, he has like a 95% chance to drop the quest item that you're going to need in order to begin the quest line to get this mount. There's like a slight chance that it doesn't. Majority of players get this item, but I've seen players that have waited 6 hours, kill the rare, which is not difficult to do, and not get the quest item. So there's like a small chance you don't get it. I don't really know what that's all about. I think it's kind of maybe a bug from the beta. They definitely probably should fix it just so there's a guarantee, because imagine waiting 6 hours and not getting the quest item. But once you slay the rare, it'll take you into the Nerubian main city of threads. And there you'll find a Nerubian which will task you with slaying a lot of other Nerubians, as well as Scarab Lords and all types of creatures, in order to get the items they need for a quick little experiment. First of all, they'll task you with collecting 1,500 Nerubian Chitin, or Chitin. I've heard it pronounced either way. I call it Chitin. But you'll first need to collect 1,500 Nerubian Chitin, which will take a little bit of time, but it's not as bad, because all you gotta do is head over to Siegehold, which is located right up here next to the Spiral Weave Delve. And inside there will be players grouping up in order to either farm Chitin or to farm Venom. At the start, you're just looking to farm Chitin, and Chitin has like a 50% drop rate. Most mobs drop it, sometimes they don't, but it takes a little bit of time, because to collect 1,500 Chitin takes a little bit of time. None of the mobs in there are all that dangerous. You don't really need a lot of gear to do a lot of pulls. Most groups are grouping up as a tank, healer, and a couple of DPS, or just a 5-man DPS group. But as long as you don't pull way too many mobs, there's nothing in there that really should end up killing you. But once you're done collecting 1,500 Nerubian Chitin, which will take you maybe a couple of hours, then you'll need to go back to the city, talk to that same Nerubian NPC, and you'll get a quest line to collect 1,000 Nerubian Venom. So then you can go back to Siegehold and then keep collecting more Nerubian Venom from the exactly same enemies that you've slain before. Nerubian Venom basically has exactly the same drop rate as Chitin. It'll just take like 1,000 more of that resource in order to be able to finish it up, so maybe a couple of hours from there. But then after you turn in the Venom, he'll give you a final quest to collect 500 Nerubian blood, which you'll then actually want to switch your farming location from Siegehold to this kind of corridor area that takes you all the way up to Hollowfall. And there you'll want to farm any elite Nerubians, whether they are hostile or not hostile. All elites drop blood, and they essentially got the same drop rate as the Chitin, the Venom. I'm starting to think it's probably Chitin instead of Chitin. Chitin sounds weird now that I'm saying it out loud, but the Bloods have exactly the same drop rate as the Chitin or Chitin, as well as Venom. So it's not like it's rare, it's plentiful, just sometimes they drop it, sometimes they don't. It's like a 50-50 every single time you kill one. So the actual grind just only gets shorter and shorter the further you get to the quest. This one took me about an hour, whereas the other stuff took me a couple of hours, depending on the resource I'm gathering. But it's not that bad. And the mobs, even though they are elites, they do hit a little harder. They have a little bit of health, but we're walking as characters with like no gear whatsoever before season 1 content, and we were doing fine. We had a tank, a healer, and a couple of DPS, but I've seen groups queuing up as a 5-man DPS group or a 4 DPS and a single healer, and it really does not take that long. As long as you don't pull like a metric amount of mobs, you'll be fine. Again, not that difficult, actually mostly easy. It just takes a little bit of time to grind all of them out. Once you're done with the quest, you head back to the Nerubian. He performs a little experiment, and you earn this beautiful mount that looks absolutely fantastic to soar through the skies with. Now, besides this, we also have 2 more mounts that you can add into your daily activities, because there is a small chance for you to obtain either of these mounts, but they are in a daily lockout, so there's 2 extra elites for you, or rares rather, for you to slay. They can also be done on multiple characters every single day. The first one is going to be in the Hollowfall, which is Beladar's spawn, which is amazing. It's a deathly, shadowy elemental with different types of shoulder pads, chest piece, and even the platform that we've seen, because we've seen this type of elemental mounts before back at Shadowlands specifically, but this one does look quite unique. This one's pretty easy. Every 3 hours, Hollowfall switches from bright, shining, holy, yellow, radiant into the dark and voidy twilight. And during that time, Beladar spawns somewhere in Hollowfall. Now, with this video, I'll also have a map showing you all of the different spawn locations for Beladar spawn. But as long as you can just find yourself a group that's waiting for this mount, which again, the actual shift happens every 3 hours and it lasts for 30 minutes. Everybody in the raid can get a tag at it for a chance at the mount spawn. However, the mount drop rate so far is about 3%, so it's very, very close to someone like Invincible, for instance. So if you want to slay him on your main character and then 3 hours come back on an ult and try to see if you can get another run at it, you also can do so. But it's just an easy mount that you can obtain as part of your daily activities within the War Within, like in between your dailies, between your renown stuff, in between the world quests or whatever other profession grinds you're doing. Just make sure to stop by Hollowfall whenever the actual Beladar's light shifts into twilight, and then try to see if you can get yourself a Beladar spawn while you're at it. And very similar to Beladar spawn is All Maul Rufus, which drops from a rare very similar to the Beladar spawn called Lurker of the Deeps. The Lurker takes a little bit more involved group effort to summon, but just like the previous mount, this one was also on a rotation, though as of right now, this early in the War Within early access, there isn't really a defined like timer for this one. What you have to do in order to summon this rare is to pull 5 levers scattered all throughout the Ringing Deeps, and then towards the southern part of the Ringing Deeps is where this rare spawns. Now, the actual levers so far seem to have some kind of like a spawn rate. We don't really know if they're available once an hour, twice an hour, or once every 3 hours. I honestly have no idea. The only thing I know is when I tried to do it with my guildies, we couldn't get the actual levers to spawn. But then 5 minutes later, I found a group in LFG where players already spawned him and I'm just waiting to fill the group with as many players as possible. But 5 players are going to have to pull these levers within 10 seconds of each other in order to spawn the rare, which is part of this group effort. 5 players are gonna have to get together in a group, then do some kind of a countdown, pull the levers about the same time as all of them do, and then fly to the rare immediately to try to see if they can get a kill for a chance at All Maul Rufus. There's no guarantee for this mount. Also, just like Beladar spawn, this one seems to have a drop rate to it. This early, we don't really know how big the drop rate is, but I imagine similar to Beladar spawn, it's going to be probably about 3% or something along that ballpark. But with that being said, that is going to be the full guide for some of the easier to get mounts that don't take a lot of RNG or are very straightforward, even though some of them do take a little bit of time, especially the more grindy ones. But all of the tasks you have to perform are actually really easy to do on players that do it right now without really needing gear at all before Season 1. With that being said, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching this video, and I hope all of you enjoyed. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, I would go ahead and give it a like. I would very, very much appreciate it. Join our Discord community if you got any questions on these mounts. Links to that in the description of every single one of the videos. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.